The Nintendo Wii was released in November 2006 here in North America for $250. And unlike other Nintendo consoles before it, this system was aimed mainly towards the casual gamers. And while the Wii was a major success all things considered, many people saw the system as nothing more than a fad or a gimmick. I don't know, I thought it was pretty good. Revealed as the Nintendo Revolution back in 2005, the Wii was the next step for Nintendo to take after their last home console, the GameCube, performed poorly. How could it though? The PS2 and OG Xbox never had second sight on it, and the GameCube will always have that to its advantage. Now, I love the Wii. It was the first game console I actually owned myself back in the glory days of 2008. Now, my older sister did own a DS during that time, which I did play every now and then, but the Wii was the system I could play as much as I want, when I want. Well, except for school days. And even though I don't really remember everything from when I got the Wii, I do remember how excited I was to finally get access to the system that's been taunting me for the past 2 years. But now that I had it, I could finally play games like Mario Galaxy, Super Smash Bros. Brawl, Wii Sports, and not that. Alright, hear me out here. I know the Wii is turning 17 years old later this year, and it is great to see the system still highly regarded by so many gamers who grew up with it even today, but the Wii, to me, is my favorite game console of all time. But the reason I consider it to be my favorite is because I just have so much nostalgia for the platform. So many fond memories of the system's countless game library, ranging from such mediocrity like this to outright masterpieces, whether alone or with multiple people. There's a certain charm to the kinds of games you could find on Wii, even if 60% of the system's library is filled with garbage that everybody hated, or Wii Music. Okay, that's funny, I'll give him that. But I don't care, man, just let me consider this my favorite game console of all time. And really, the only system that can come anywhere close in terms of the sheer quality of games and memories towards the Wii is the Nintendo Switch. But because the Switch is more recent, the same levels of nostalgia don't really exist as much for me, therefore I'm still more partial to the Wii. Maybe over time, but just not really anytime soon, to be honest. Now, it would seem absolutely criminal to get this far in the video talking about the Wii without actually dedicating the entire video to the Nintendo Wii. So, here we go. I'm finally going to talk about the Nintendo Wii. Let's begin. So let's start off with the look of the console itself. It's quite nice. I mean, yeah, it's just a small white box, but it's a pretty sleek one at that. And if you thought the Wii looked nice on its own, give it its included gray stand and it just looks that much better. So the front of the system features a disc slot that lights up when you get a notification, a power button that has a different color depending on whether it's on or off, the reset button, which props for Nintendo for having a reset button on all their home consoles since the NES. That level of consistency was really cool until they decided to take that away from us with the Wii U. Okay, I hate Nintendo now. You also have the eject button to take out games, and a flap that has an SD card slot in it along with the sync button. And the top features a flap that reveals a compartment for GameCube controllers and memory cards. Specs wise, the Wii's not really gonna wow you. Even back when it released in November 2006, it was pretty underpowered. Need I remind you, this thing released after both the PS3 and the Xbox 360, systems that were far more advanced in terms of specs, and the Wii specs pale in comparison. The lack of HDMI support, only going up to 480p as the max, makes a good majority of the games look dated. Probably upsetting a good majority of the population by saying that. Not to mention no DVD support so you can't play movies, and you have what is fundamentally just another GameCube except released to be a different looking console. In fact, the hardware is very similar to the GameCube. That's why the system is backwards compatible with pretty much every GameCube game, which I think is the only feature of the Wii that I think is still the best even today. It does also have SD card support, which is pretty cool as well, but not as cool as playing GameCube games on your Wii though. In fact, the Wii is my only means of playing GameCube games because I don't own a GameCube. What? Now, we can't talk about the Wii without talking about its central gimmick, the motion controls. There's a reason why this system was aimed towards casuals and became a runaway success, because of the motion controls. From what I know, the Wii wasn't the system that introduced motion controls, let me know if that's true or not, but the Wii was pretty revolutionary for centralizing the entire gimmick of the system around it, and yeah, It was still a bit too new for it to work perfectly, but it worked fine enough for it to still be fun in most games. And that was all thanks to the Wii Remote, a TV remote styled controller that had motion controls built in. But while the Wii Remote resembles a TV remote, the way you use it is quite different from regular controllers. For one thing, you actually hold it the same way you'd hold a TV remote, except you swing it for that action to be translated in the game, like swinging a baseball bat, performing a spin attack, or playing an instrument poorly. For a lot of the good games on Wii that motion controls are used for, it's pretty in-depth and works great, but for the former, yeah, it's pretty horrible. And while a good majority of my experience with the Wii Remote's motion controls have been relatively positive, there were points where they were pretty flawed and didn't always work the way they were intended. You could even hold the Wii Remote sideways for certain games like 2D platformers and racing titles, and it's just okay. I'm not the biggest fan of the hard plasticky feel that it has. I know other systems controllers were also made of hard plastic, but it never really felt as hard plasticky as the Wii, to be honest. I don't know. It never really felt premium to me. I mean, it didn't really feel like it was made with cheap plastic or anything, but compared to other controllers, it could have felt a bit better. But minor nitpicks to the side, please, I'm just too darn tired. The Wii Remote has a major flaw. The motion controls work perfectly fine, and the buttons all have a hard clicky feel to them that feels okay, but it doesn't have an analog stick. Well, that's where the nunchuck comes in. Not only is it a Wii Remote add-on that plugs into the bottom of the controller, but it has all these extra buttons and an analog stick, and it's also just okay. Most of the games that I have for the Wii don't really require the nunchuck that much, as it's mainly used for games that might require it for certain minigames, or as extra control options in certain games. But some games want to take advantage of this forsaken thing and require the use of it throughout the entire game it's used for. It's not a bad accessory. I mean, it's okay. It's just far from my favorite, with it having motion controls of its own built into it that's nowhere near as good as the Wii Remote, and how it's a little held back by the wire cord being too short. Now, I don't know if this was ever an idea Nintendo had during the Wii era, but what if they designed some games entirely around using dual Wii Remotes? I mean, the Switch gives you that ability with the Joy-Cons, which are basically mini Wii Remotes that are prone to drifting in a year or two. Oh man, being a gamer is hell. And I mean, the Joy-Cons are similar to Wii Remotes, and if they adopted the idea of using dual controllers before the Nintendo Switch released, then come on. It had to be inspired by something. Now, if you were one of the individuals who just thought the Wii Remote's motion controls were just not accurate enough for them to work properly, then Nintendo would come to your rescue. Why can't modern Nintendo be like this? In 2009, the accuracy of the Wii Remote's motion controls increased when they released Wii Motion Plus, an add-on accessory for the Wii Remote that makes the motion detection even more accurate than the originals. There weren't a whole lot of games that used it, but the games that did use it straight up required it, since that specific game required more precise motion controls than what the regular Wii Remote brought to the table. Now, I don't have the accessory, but I do have the type of Wii Remote that has the Motion Plus built in, which was re-released later on in the Wii U era. I'm sorry, the Dark era for Nintendo. Oh, come on, don't give me that, you know it was. But while I don't really own a whole lot of games that require the use of the Motion Plus, I've used it enough to say that it is a big improvement. I mean, it's called Wii Motion Plus for a reason. But I like what the Wii Remote brought to the table, though. It was very innovative. It didn't always work great, especially for games that had forced motion controls, but for the games it did work with, worked well enough. Now, make no mistake, this is not a great controller. I mean, it's alright. Its motion detection is perfectly fine, but I was never really a big fan of it even when I was a young gamer who played every game with it. What? Now let's talk about the menu. The Wii was the first Nintendo console to have a dedicated home menu, kinda set up like a bunch of channels. In fact, every application on the Wii menu were called channels, including the ones that were already pre-installed on your Wii to begin with. The disc channel, which is the channel you go to play discs, whether they're Wii or GameCube games. The Mii channel, starting the debut of the iconic and popular Miis. Customizable avatars that you could customize to look exactly like you, a family member, friends, or fictional characters like Mario or Mickey Mouse. The Mii channel was a ton of fun, and it also helps that it's loaded with personality. The music is great, the Mii Plaza is a great place to see your Miis interact with each other, and you can even feature your Mii as playable characters in games. The Mii channel would eventually continue beyond the Wii as the Mii Maker on later systems, but they pale so much in comparison to the Wii version. Whether it's the lack of personality, the lack of other things to do outside of actually making Miis, or just being too forgettable. Mii Maker on Nintendo Switch. But I guess it just goes to show nothing tops the original sometimes. But moving off of the Mii channel, here we have the Photo channel, which I'm just as baffled as all of you. Where's the Photo channel? This is a channel that takes the photos you received from completing games, because some games give you a commemorative photo on the Wii message board that I always thought was a nice little gesture from Nintendo. Or from photos that were in your SD card and lets you do wacky things with them. You could turn them into a puzzle, change the tone of the photo, and draw on your photo and add stamps and stuff. It's not really anything you'd spend any more than 5 minutes in, but some people might see it as a fun distraction every now and then. Then there's the Wii Shop channel, which was a digital store you could browse to buy more channels for your Wii menu, like Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime Video, while also having small downloadable games as well, branded as WiiWare. And that was great too, but the real deal of the Wii Shop channel was the Virtual Console. A brand that was used to advertise retro games from past Nintendo consoles like the NES, SNES, Nintendo 64, even Sega Genesis and TurboGrafx-16 games even made the cut, which I don't even know what that last one is, but still. Awesome. Nintendo took such a basic idea and ran with it to perfection in the Wii era. Now, playing older games on your current systems isn't anything crazy these days, but back then it was pretty big, and even now, the Virtual Console service is still Nintendo's best attempt at getting classic games on their modern platforms. Now, on later systems, the Virtual Console service kinda decreased in quality, and the Switch has even ditched the Virtual Console service entirely for a paid online membership. Don't ask why, I'm still trying to do the math on this one. And I don't think it'd be fair to say that the Virtual Console service was flawless either, but it was a great and convenient way to play games so many people grew up playing in the 80s and 90s to re-experience it again, despite a single Virtual Console game not being downloaded on my Wii, and how the Wii Shop channel has been shut down since January 2019. This must be what pain feels like. Now, the forecast and news channels were actually pretty cool because they made it seem like Nintendo wanted their latest system to be that all-in-one device that you could use to not only play games on, but also watch movies through the streaming services on offer here, browse the internet, and do stuff like check the news and weather forecast for your specific areas. But considering that Nintendo designed a game system in 2006 where specs-wise isn't as much as its competitors, but still has the ability to do all that is very impressive. Now, I didn't really connect my Wii Online to use such features up until it got discontinued, which took both the news and weather channels down with it, but there's no denying how cool it was that an official Nintendo console let you see the news and check the weather. And this is still something we have yet to see on any Nintendo console afterwards. No wonder the Wii U failed. There's also settings, the SD card menu, and the Wii message board. Basically the place you go to get notifications from Nintendo or achievements for games. You could even message your friends on this thing back when it was an actual feature. Again, how did Nintendo make the system so underpowered but gave it the best online features of any console up until that point? Wow, I sure do know how to upset people. Never really tried this feature because I never really connected my Wii Online until the last few months leading up to the service's end, but looking back, I so would have thought this was a great way to contact my friends even though phones were alive and well during this time. And there's also a calendar here too, and you could even write quick little memos, something I did way too much of as a kid. But now let's move on to Nintendo Wi-Fi connection. This was Nintendo's primary online service that was used in the Nintendo DS and Wii era that not only let you play online in games, but also let you use online features on your consoles until eventually getting discontinued in 2014. A lot of people felt like the Nintendo Wi-Fi service was lacking in comparison to Xbox Live and PlayStation Network, which, let's be honest, it kinda was. And correct me if I'm wrong, but no other Nintendo home console offered the ability to play online aside from the Japan-exclusive Nintendo 64 disk drive and potentially the GameCube. I'm not 100% sure. Not to mention, it was always up in the air about whether online play was actually going to work well in certain games, because in some games it did, but others, yeah, not so much. This is something we still see today with online games on the Nintendo Switch. Some games even had content locked behind online play. I never really did a whole lot of online play on the Wii at the time, so it doesn't really matter that much considering it's discontinued now. Now let's move on to the reason why we spend hundreds of dollars on these stupid pieces of garbage. The games. This is the reason I love the Wii, okay? I mean, it was great getting to play GameCube games on the system, but man, the new games that were made from the ground up for the system is where the system shines the brightest in my opinion. Now, granted, a good majority of games were trash, but others were outright masterpieces. And before you ask, no, we're not bringing that up here today. Alright, fine. Maybe some other time, just not today. Come on, man, I'm tired. Wii Sports was the system's big launch title that fared quite well, actually. I mean, think about it. What better game to introduce the world to motion controls than with a sports game that uses motion controls? It was brilliant. Wii Sports was great. All the sports on offer here, while it is a small amount, is fairly in-depth and showcases the fun of motion controls in a great way. And it was incredibly popular too, even getting a sequel in 2009, a remaster in 2014 on the Wii U, and a new iteration of this series on the Nintendo Switch in April 2022. And while it's commendable for Nintendo to try and recapture the magic of the original, and sometimes fail horribly, none can compare to the 2006 original. Many might look at the 2009 game Wii Sports Resort as the pinnacle of the series, but I never played that, so let's just disregard the first 25 words I just said and talk about something other than Wii Sports for once. Like, Wii Play. Man, I just can't catch a break. This game is okay. Essentially, it's a minigame collection made in 2007 around using the Wii Remote's pointer for its 8 minigames, such as shooting range, fishing, and whatever the hell this monstrosity is. It did showcase the Remote's pointer in a smart way, and some of the minigames here are actually pretty fun and engaging with their high score-based gameplay, but the thing that kinda holds this game back is how generic it all feels, and the lack of really a whole lot of other minigames here as well. Now, granted, this game probably wasn't designed to wow you the same way games like Mario Galaxy, or even Wii Sports was for that matter, as it was probably just designed as a simple fun minigame collection disguised as a tech demo. Wii Music, if you couldn't already tell from before, is a pretty bad game. And overall, it's just a pretty mindless and boring time. Now, to be fair, there are some minigames on the side that are decent at the very least, but it just doesn't excuse the rest of the game from being bad. And speaking of bad games, here we have Hot Wheels Beat That, and it's a bad racing game, alright? The more you know, I guess. Man, I got out of bed early for this. And speaking of racing games, here we have Excite Truck, another one of the Wii's big launch titles. There's not really a whole lot to say about it. It's a pretty standard racing game on Wii that doesn't really share any similarities to Excite Bike on NES outside of the name, but it is quite solid and a fun racing game overall. But what else is there to say, man? Smash Bros got a good amount of love on the system with Super Smash Bros. Brawl. It had a full-fledged adventure mode that basically functions as its own separate game in terms of length. It has arguably some of the best stage selection in the entire series, great music, masterpiece mode, cool unlockables, and this was the game where third-party characters were introduced. Sonic and Solid Snake. I know it's not a big number of third-party characters, but it made way for so many other third-party reps to join the series later on, most of which nobody could have ever imagined, like Pac-Man. But that's just Pac-Man, though. It's not like they'd bring in too many characters that are too out of the ordinary, like Steve from Minecraft. What the hell? Now let's talk platformers, mainly ones that were on vacation up until the Wii era. Wario Land came back on Wii with Shake It. It's pretty fun. It's not going to blow your mind, especially with the submarine levels that requires tilting the Wii Remote to progress that I didn't really like. But other than that, this game was good. I also think it's worth pointing out the art style because this is made by Goodfeel. This company loves to experiment with distinct art styles that just work. And Wario Land Shake It is a great example of that. I'd love to see this series come back, especially considering this game came out in 2008 and we haven't had an original 2D platformer starring Wario in years. Where did the years go? Now let's move on to Mario. The 3 different platforming games Mario had on the system were excellent. Some of them definitely being contenders for best video games of all time. I'm not going to say a whole lot about them because I might get carried away and accidentally shift the focus of today's video on the Mario Galaxy games instead of the Wii, and we don't want that. Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 are fantastic 3D platformers unlike anything Mario 64 and Mario Sunshine accomplished. They're a bit more linear than those games, more so Galaxy 2, but makes up for it by putting you in space and having you traversing different galaxies, each of different variety and creativity. With excellent music, excellent level design, excellent controls, excellent gameplay, excellent basically everything, these games are incredible, especially Galaxy 1. They both feel epic in a way I don't think the Mario series has felt since. But seriously, give these games a try. Trust me, they're amazing. You only live once, come on. And while the Mario Galaxy games are stellar in their own rights, let's just say you're the type of person who grew up with the original Super Mario Bros. On NES and want something more akin to that. Well, I guess you're gonna have to settle for New Super Mario Bros. Wii, a traditional 2D Mario adventure that shares many similarities with the classics. Well, sort of. Because while the new Super games are great, they do feel a bit too generic to say they retain the magic games like Mario 3 and World have. But that simply doesn't take away from this series either. Again, these games are great, just not distinct enough from each other, and some parts of the game just feels a bit too bland for my liking. But I do quite like New Super Mario Bros. Wii though. Level design's great, controls are great, and this is the first 2D Mario game that lets you play with 4 players simultaneously, and it's an absolute blast. I played this game so much with my sister back in the day, and it makes me appreciate this series more than others. This game or even the other new Super games aren't gonna wow you if you've played the original 2D games in the 80s or 90s, or even against other amazing 2D platformers these days, but you'll still have a fun time with them, especially in multiplayer. 2010 was a momentous occasion for the Mario series, as it was the franchise's 25th anniversary. Surely with such an impressive milestone like this, Nintendo would do something to commemorate this amazing milestone. And wouldn't you know, they absolutely did. Sad on us all they did was just re-release the SNES game Super Mario All-Stars and put it on a Wii disc with literally no changes, no adjustments. It's just the SNES game on Wii. That's it. Guess that confirms it. This is contagious. I mean, this is still a compilation of 3 of some of the best platformers of all time in the Lost Levels, so you're definitely going to have fun with this, but you gotta admit, the effort put here is literally non-existent. Now, while the Wii already had the ability to play GameCube games, 2009 Nintendo did something interesting / lazy / I don't really know anymore, okay? Stop asking. But basically what they did was take a few GameCube games and port them over to the Wii with Wii Remote controls dubbed the New Play Control branding. It was okay. Not a lot of games were supported. Some were exclusive to Japan, and other games that attempted motion controls just didn't work as good as they did with standard controls. In fact, I only own one of them, being Mario Power Tennis, and lo and behold, it's not that great. Not referring to the game itself, because as a Mario Tennis game, it's great. In fact, it's the last great Mario Tennis game we'll ever have, because Camelot Software would eventually forget what made these games so special in later entries. There's a lot of fun modes here, a lot of character and personality, and the core tennis gameplay is awesome. I just don't think the GameCube controls translated well to the Wii Remote. They just feel super forced and tacked on, like there was no effort trying to make the controls work for the Wii version. It just feels super sluggish and doesn't feel as responsive as it should, which is pretty disappointing. How the Wii never got an original Mario tennis game to call its own for that matter is beyond me, but for a great existing tennis game not translating well to the next system kinda sucks. I mean, it plays fine, and I still had fun with it. I mean, it's still a functioning and playable game and all. I just wasn't a fan of the controls all that much. And sticking to the topic of sports games, here we have Mario Sports Mix, a compilation of 4 different sports that all use motion controls that proved to be a pretty fine game. It wasn't anything crazy or anything, it was just a Mario sports game with 4 sports in one developed by Square Enix. This was always a pretty forgotten entry in the Mario sports game, as I don't hear a lot of people talk about it online. But it's a pretty underrated game. I got a fair amount of fun out of it, and sure, it's nothing crazy, but it's good enough for what it is, and I actually wouldn't mind seeing something like this come back in the future. And no, Mario Sports Superstars on 3DS doesn't count despite not even playing it. Trust me, I know a bad game when I see it. And I played Wii Music. But here we are at the end. The Nintendo Wii is an awesome system. There's simply no hiding that after 26 minutes. And so many things just add up to it being my favorite system of all time. Though, despite that, I could definitely see why many people saw it as a gimmick. But you gotta admit, it was a gimmick that did incredibly well for Nintendo, selling over 101 million units worldwide. And there's no doubt that anyone who picked up the Wii Remote and played Wii Sports with a few friends had a blast at some point or another. Even if the system wasn't really your thing, and yeah, it is pretty weak specs-wise, but I grew up with the Wii, so I'm more willing to look past all that and just have a good time with it either way. Not to mention, some of the games here are some of the very best games of all time. Now, a lot of the games on this system are garbage, so I can't hide everything negative about the Wii. See, I'm not biased. But there's a certain charm to all these bad games on the system. It oddly gives it its own identity. Probably not the best identity, but hey, it's an identity regardless. But the good games here are really good. I will never get tired of games like Mario Galaxy 1 and 2, Wii Sports, Super Smash Bros. Brawl, Mario Kart Wii. Even some of the more mediocre titles like Wii Play can still be kind of fun. And hey, if you somehow don't like the game library for this system, then you could play your entire GameCube library on this system. What's not to love? But unfortunately, in 2011, Nintendo released a newer version of the Wii, not with the stand, and removing all GameCube support for the system. That's kinda lame, and a few years later, Nintendo put out the Wii Mini, a cheaper and even more worthless redesign of the Wii, as GameCube support was still out of the picture, and also internet access. But before the Wii Mini, Nintendo put out their next system, the Wii U, in late 2012. Do I even have to tell you what happened here? It didn't have GameCube support! And that's going to wrap up today's video. If you enjoyed the video, then please consider subscribing and checking out my other videos on my channel where you'll find more videos like this one. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.